Hi, welcome to another interview with El Vocero Hispano. Today we're going to be speaking with the founding executive director, Diana Tellefson Torres. She is the founding executive director of the United Farm Workers Foundation, which focuses on the rights of farm workers, agricultural workers, just giving them the basic needs and figuring out what else they need if they're lacking in other perspectives. So just to learn a little bit more about her and the foundation, since she's here in Michigan, I have Diana. Thank you for being here with us. I know you're probably tired, you're busy, but we're excited to have you here in Michigan.
Oh, thank you so much. Nope, not tired at all. Doesn't compare to the type of work that farm workers do day in and day out. So my job is fairly easy in comparison.
Yeah. So just tell me a little bit about you and what your trip is focused on here in Michigan.
Sure. Well, I've been with the farm worker movement now for 18 years. As the executive director of the UFW Foundation, it was critical that I come to Michigan to be able to speak to farm workers directly. We have 2 staff members here in Southwest Michigan that we hired during the pandemic to ensure that farm workers were receiving information about their rights, different resources that were necessary, like the COVID-19 vaccine and masks, etc. And so we have been, over the last week, I've been working with my 2 team members to make sure that I had the opportunity to talk to farm workers who live here permanently in Michigan, farm workers who are coming into the country through the H-2A guest worker program, and working and living in labor camps, essentially, where farm workers are provided housing. And in addition, I've been meeting with different nonprofits that are providing different types of services to the Latino community in different parts of Michigan, and really understanding what are some of the gaps that exist in rural Michigan in particular, and how we can work together with government and also with other nonprofits and with farm workers to really work on the types of protections that farm workers have here in this state, and then also ensuring enforcement of laws that do exist, and making sure that farm workers know what their rights are, and are engaged to be able to work on the changes that they want to see here in Michigan at the national level.
Yeah, we spoke a little bit about that before the interview, just that you guys are seeing a little bit more of migrant workers coming from different countries. So it is really important for them to know what their rights are, since, you know, there's scams out there, unfortunately, but it is important for them to know what's going on.
Absolutely.
And we know that Cesar Chavez was the founder of the United Farm Workers of America. So this is kind of like the aspect, another aspect of it. So how did he influence you to start this as well?
Well, I never got to meet Cesar Chavez. He had already passed away when I started working with the farm worker movement. But, you know, his legacy is a living legacy of work that continues to be done to improve the lives of farm workers and the protections that they have. And so just hearing all of the stories about Cesar and Dolores, Larry Itliong, who's one of our Filipino leaders at the beginning of the farm worker movement. It's very humbling to know that I'm part of a movement that has now existed for 60 years and has done so much good in this country to engage farm workers, to change laws, and to really highlight the inequities that exist for farm workers here in this country. So, as I mentioned, you know, this is work that continues, and there's much to be done, and so there's many of us in the farm worker movement that continue to carry on that legacy of making sure that farm workers' voices are heard.
And then we had the whole pandemic happen, so did that affect you guys in any type of way?
Yes, well, farm workers were very much impacted because they continued to work during the pandemic. So farm workers were also often traveling together, either traveling in buses or traveling in vans together. And many farm workers who do live permanently in the United States often don't have enough money for their own vehicles, so they share rides with other people. So they were interacting a lot with other individuals while carpooling, also while they were at work. Many employers were not providing the PPE or the masks that that would protect the workers, and so we were distributing close to 2 million masks in different parts of the country, including here in Michigan. And so it was important that government officials were hearing directly from farm workers about what they were experiencing, because many were getting sick, but the vast majority of farm workers don't have health care. And so the fact is that it was very important to prioritize farm workers for vaccination, and to ensure that there were accessible resources for farm workers. So we actually advocated with the U.S. Department of Agriculture to ensure that there were resources that were being provided to farm workers, that funding wasn't just going to the growers or to the employers for pandemic assistance, but that farm workers, the frontline food workers, were able to receive that as well. So this summer, we should be hearing from the USDA about which organizations will be the intermediaries who are able to provide those funds to farm workers. And so that is going to be about $655 million that is going to be dispersed throughout the country. And so that's going to be wonderful news that farm workers are able to get $600 of pandemic relief support when they do apply. So we'll be getting more information from the U.S. Department of Agriculture about what all the nuances about that program are.
Okay.
But the person will have to demonstrate that they work in farm work.
Okay. That sounds interesting, and it's a great opportunity for them too, because like you mentioned, they were I think they would call it the frontline workers that, we were all staying home or working from home, and they're the ones going out there risking their lives. So once you guys provided or helped provide the vaccines to the agricultural workers, did you see them accepting them rapidly, or were they a little bit iffy about the vaccines?
Many workers were asking about the vaccines. So first and foremost, because there was a lot of fear, especially at the beginning of the pandemic, that they did not have access to go somewhere. Often, example, the grocery store. Just going to the grocery store at the beginning of the pandemic was very hard because workers are working for long hours. And so when they'd go to the store, there weren't the things that they needed. And so there was fear that the same thing was going to happen with the vaccine. Like, when would they have time to go and access getting a vaccine? And whether their employer would let them go and get it during work hours. And so there were all of these questions, but there were many workers who were contacting us asking about that information, and many farm workers did participate in different vaccine events right from the start.
Okay.
It's also just that lack of information in rural areas often that, it takes time to get accurate and credible information to the community. And so it's something that we continue to do because we know that people still need their boosters. There are people who still haven't received the vaccine, but knowing that protection is still there and that they're able to access it is very important, and where they can access it. One of the surveys that we did at the beginning of the pandemic in December 2020, where over 12,000 farm workers participated, farm workers that responded, about 12% said they'd never been to the doctor. Never. And so part of our work and all of our work is to ensure that people know where they can access that type of medical attention and support that's needed.
Yeah, and the other thing you mentioned too was the health insurance, that many didn't have any, but that is pretty common if they can't get access to that. So
yeah, 75% of those same workers that were surveyed said that they didn't have health insurance. And so that's just the stark reality of farm workers in this country, that they've been, not only are they excluded from so many labor protections at the national level, like overtime pay, the right to unionize, and in many cases there's exclusions for minimum wage, you name it, workers' compensation depending on the state. Farm workers really needed to hear that there were resources for them that they could access regarding, the pandemic and the vaccines, etc. And that there were federally qualified health centers and different places where they could access that vaccine. It's very important that they understood.
Okay. Yeah. I heard a lot about that too. Just because I have people, family members that they have also done farm working, so you just hear a lot of stories about them. So it's great that there is help out there, that you guys are working hard to let them know that there is resources for them. So, yeah. And then another question I had is that everything started in California, and now we're here in Michigan. So how or why is it important, the agriculture here in Michigan, to the rest of the nation?
Well, first and foremost, there's a lot of history here in Michigan in the farm worker movement. In fact, the archives for the union are here at the Walter Reuther Library at Wayne State in Detroit. And so from the beginning of the farm worker movement, the United Auto Workers were very supportive when farm workers went on strike in California. And so the UAW was supporting the strike out there, and Walter Reuther, who was in charge at the time of UAW, was a wonderful thought partner with Caesar and the union. And so there's a lot of history of Michigan supporting farm workers in California. But the fact is that we are trying to pass laws that protect farm workers at the national level. And so the participation of farm workers in different states is essential. It's necessary. And so Michigan has a very large agricultural industry with a very diverse agricultural community, and many community members and families who move from Florida and Texas and California even to come to work in Michigan during certain seasons. There's workers who live here permanently. There's H-2A guest workers that come in through the agricultural guest worker program to work during certain seasons or time frames. And so it's really important that we work with farm workers here in Michigan to ensure that they're sharing their stories, that they're engaging in the changes that they want to see, and the policies that they want to see, and the living conditions that they want to see. And so, just historically, there's been a lot of abuse within the agricultural industry of how farm workers have been treated. And as I mentioned, farm workers in the 1930s were excluded from many of the labor protections that were being negotiated during the New Deal. So the Fair Labor Standards Act, which was the huge bill with different labor protections for workers, excluded farm workers. And back then, a large part of the population of farm workers were people of color, African Americans in the South, right? And so really there's the system that has been set up that really has kept farm workers in poverty for so long and isolated. And so there's a lot of work to be done in Michigan, but there are a lot of workers who want to learn and know that information, who do want to get engaged, and we want to be able to work with other partners in the state to ensure that farm workers are protected, that we those wrongs that exist, that we make them right, those exclusions that we've seen at state levels and at federal levels. And it's exciting. I mean, there's Michigan farm workers who have already gone to Washington, D.C. to speak directly with congressional members that have met with, like, Senator Stabenow. And so, the reality is that there's a lot of work to be done here. Farm workers on Friday, when I met with workers in Southwest Michigan. They were telling me that driver's licenses aren't being provided to undocumented people here in Michigan, and yet the reality is that at least half of farm workers are undocumented in this country, including in Michigan. And so the people who are contributing, who are providing the necessary food that we need during not just a pandemic, but every day, that are contributing to this economy, this robust agricultural industry here in this country and in this state. Some basic things have been stripped from them.
Yeah.
And so that's why we're working to ensure that we have immigration reform at the federal level. And it's important that farm workers have access in the meantime to driver's licenses. And there's so many other labor protections like overtime that's very much needed.
Yeah. The whole driver's license, that's been a constant, fight that we've had here in Michigan, because we do see that they need it. It's just a basic need of life, to go to school or to work, to help provide for their family. So it is something that's been constantly going on. But like you said, there's a lot of work, but there is a start, and that's the good thing about it, that now there's people working here and trying to figure out what we can do next. So it's a good start. And as a founding director, like what are some of your goals that you have overall and here in Michigan, now that you've discovered a little bit of our state?
Definitely, we need to get immigration reform passed at the federal level. It's such a necessity. There are farm workers who haven't seen their family members in decades, who are doing such critical work in this country. And so we believe they've earned being able to go and visit their family members and come back and work, and not feel like their family member passes away and they can't go and pay their respects, or they can't see their parents before they pass away. So it's just something that farm workers constantly express as a top priority for them. And so that's a top priority for us, making sure that the laws that do exist are being enforced on the ground, that the laws that exist to protect H-2A guest workers that we've fought for so many years are being followed, that farm workers aren't being exploited, and making sure that we're able to work both with the state legislature in the future and with Congress to ensure that farm workers receive the protections that they've been excluded from, overtime pay, making sure that all farm workers have more than the minimum wage, that they have a living wage, that they're able to provide for their families and live with the type of dignity of having their own home, and being able to just not worry about providing food for their own families. So there's a lot of work to be done, but those are key priorities, and ensuring that more and more farm workers engage so that they can share their stories and advocate for themselves at the state level, local level, and at the federal level.
Okay, those are all great things, and I know there's a lot of work to be done, but like you said, it's a start, and we're here now, so
yes.
Yeah. Just because I've learned a lot from history of all the abuses that migrant workers have gone through. It's just the basic needs of using the bathroom or breaks or being out in the sun the whole day. So knowing that there's a difference, at least from that, it gives us hope. So
exactly, yeah. And a lot of the work that's been done at the federal level, for instance, where in California we were able to get overtime pay for farm workers. We've been able to get heat standards where farm workers have to be provided with shade when it's a certain degrees. And in Washington State, we've also won that. And something as basic as shade and breaks and clean, cool water, like you would think that should be provided already, but many employers fight off these regulations or laws that would exist to provide these basic things to farm workers. And so we introduced a bill specifically about heat standards at the federal level.
Okay.
And the Biden administration has announced that they're going to be working on rules, administrative rules, to have heat standards for farm workers. So there's been a comment period. And sometimes that takes a number of years. So we've been pushing that this needs to be emergency rules that protect farm workers so that can happen as soon as possible, because it's already starting to get hot.
Yeah, it's already summer, so.
Exactly.
Yeah. Is there anything else you would like to add to?
Yeah, I mean, people can, for anyone who's interested in either supporting, getting involved, whether you're a farm worker or not a farm worker, you can go to ufwfoundation.org or sepuede.org. And there's also a text messaging program where farm workers can get more information, especially about the USDA program. We can provide, as soon as we have information of when that's going to start, we can provide farm workers with information about how to apply.
Okay.
So they can certainly send us a message through our text messaging program as well.
Okay. And that program that you mentioned, it's not approved yet, but you said that people would have to basically prove that they've been a migrant worker, right, during the pandemic?
It's already been announced by the U.S. Department of Agriculture. The UFW Foundation advocated for that program, and I actually, when we did the media work on that, the USDA's Secretary Tom Vilsack, and I were on the same call to announce this program last September. And so the USDA is just putting all of the pieces together of how it's going to get implemented, and what type of paperwork or what things farm workers need to provide, and what are the organizations that are going to provide that support. And so that should be at some point this summer. So we'll provide more information through that. And yes, they have to demonstrate that they've worked in farm work, during the pandemic.
Okay.
So we'll provide more details about that and who are the organizations that could provide that support.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you for being here. Thank you for all your work that you're doing. Definitely hard work, but thank you.
Thank you, Edith. I appreciate you covering this story.
Yeah, and you're always welcomed here as well, whenever you come back to Michigan.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
So if you've been a migrant worker and like you just heard right now, there is going to be some help for you. We don't have the concrete or official information of the documents needed, but if you have been a migrant worker, then just stay tuned for more information on that. To receive more information about the UFW Foundation, you can go to ufwfoundation.org or sepuede.org. And then there's text messaging resources as well. It's Se Puede to 877-877. And that was it. Thank you for being here once again. And for more information or more interviews in English and Spanish, you can always visit our website at elvocerous.com or our Facebook and YouTube page at El Vocero Hispano TV. Thank you.